This happens when you start living from your truth. Not every one of us is ready to face that truth, the truth about ourselves. But one thing is certain. When you stop pretending, when you no longer have the strength to keep wearing those masks, life begins to change in ways you never imagined. This video won't just share theories or profound quotes from Carl Jung. It's a journey for you to truly realize what's happening inside yourself. If you've ever felt like you're not living authentically, don't take your eyes off the screen. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join me to the end of this video, where it might be the first door you open for yourself. And then you realize, the truth doesn't need to be shouted to be powerful. It only needs to be lived. No one but you can define what that truth is. It doesn't come from a self-help book, nor from any advice, not even from great minds like Carl Jung. They may show the way, but only you can walk it. That truth is never perfect or comfortable. Sometimes, it comes with loss. A relationship, a job, or even an identity you once held tight as if it were yourself. But then you understand, nothing is more precious than the feeling of coming back to yourself. This awakening is not a grand event you share on social media. It has no spotlight. Instead, it happens in the quietest moments. When you walk away from a conversation because you no longer have the energy to pretend to care, when you relax your body and allow yourself to say no without feeling guilty, when you're alone and finally feel enough, fully enough, safe enough to stop trying to please anyone. You begin to filter everything, not by logic, but by feeling. You don't need a checklist, no bullet points about what you should or shouldn't do. Your body, your heart, your soul, all start to become the most honest guidance system. And the strange thing happens. When you start living authentically, the things that no longer fit begin to leave on their own. No need to chase them, no need to explain. They fall away like autumn leaves, leaving you bare but free. If you've ever felt like you're wearing clothes that don't belong to you, living in a script you didn't write, perhaps now is the time to return. Not to create a better version of yourself, but to come back to the self that was never distorted by others' expectations. You don't need to impress the world. You just need to impress yourself. Stay until the end of this video. Because if you're reading these lines, it's no coincidence. Maybe this is the whisper you needed to hear today. And who knows, it could be the first light for your inner revolution. Silent but powerful. There is no longer an internal battle between the persona you show to the world and the true self inside you. When you live from your truth, you no longer have to waste energy performing. You don't need to put on a kind face when you're hurting. You don't have to smile politely when it betrays the integrity of your heart. You don't need to engage in meaningless conversations just to avoid feeling alone. You choose genuine solitude over fake connections. And in that choice, for the first time, you feel a kind of peace you've never touched before. This is not a path for the weak. Your truth may cost you relationships you once thought would last forever. It may leave you standing alone in a room where everyone speaks against your heart. But then you understand, isolation for living authentically is always better than conformity at the cost of losing yourself. You no longer need the crowd to feel steady. You become as solid as a rock because you have stopped running away from yourself. From there, you begin to live like someone who has returned home. Not from a distant journey, but from an exile away from yourself. Things no longer need to be perfectly clear or easy to understand. You become comfortable with ambiguity. You learn to trust your intuition even when it can't be explained. You walk a path without a name, but each step echoes something deeply right within your heart. You begin to listen to subtlety. A conversation that lightens your heart. A gaze that makes you feel seen. A place where you can finally breathe freely. You no longer need much to feel enough. Because when you live from your truth, you are no longer missing anything. You simply need less noise, less pretense, less effort to be someone else. And in that less, you find the fullness you have sought your whole life. Living from your truth is not a destination. It's a journey you choose every day. A return to honesty, to boundaries, to the simplest yet deepest needs of your soul. It's how you begin to live a life that doesn't need acceptance, yet is complete. A life that doesn't need to be perfect, yet is sacred. A life where you don't just exist, you truly live. True maturity is not about becoming someone perfect, but about stopping the effort to become someone other than yourself. You no longer try to fix yourself as if you were an unfinished project. You begin to see yourself as a living expression of a sacred journey, not needing to be perfect, only authentic. And it is that authenticity that becomes the gateway to the deepest healing. Healing is no longer about chasing a state of no longer hurting, but about learning to embrace yourself, even when you are in pain. You stop blaming yourself for still being triggered. You no longer feel ashamed when old wounds still make you tremble. Instead, you whisper to yourself, "I am here with you." And it is that compassionate presence that transforms the entire depth of recovery. It's no longer a race to return to normal. It is a commitment. Your new normal will have room for vulnerability, for complexity, for truth. You begin to understand that every emotional reaction is not a sign of weakness, but the language of the soul. Every sadness, every anger, every moment of escape is a call for love. And when you listen instead of resisting, they soften. Not because you suppress them, but because you see them. Understand them. Receive them as the parts of yourself long abandoned. That is when you live from a place no longer dependent on outside approval. You live from an inner stillness, where you know what is right for you, even when others don't understand. Where you hold your boundaries without apology. Where you say no without guilt. Where you dare to choose yourself, not because you are selfish, but because you have abandoned yourself too many times before. From that space, your compassion grows deeper. You no longer judge others for being unawakened. You no longer try to change them to fit your world. You understand that everyone is fighting battles no one sees. And because you have learned to be gentle with yourself, you are gentler with others. No more expectations, no more pressure. Just a presence full of understanding. This is a new kind of freedom. No need to prove anything. No need to achieve to be loved. No need to do more to be enough. You are enough, even if you are not perfect yet. You are worthy, even as you continue to heal. And that is the deepest liberation you will ever know. And then you understand, the truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It doesn't need noise, proof, or anyone's approval. The truth only needs you to be there, present with it, moment by moment. It lives in how you return to yourself after every loss. In how you breathe deeply when the world demands you react. In how you choose silence instead of defending your ego. This is not surrender, but self-mastery. Not compromise, but awakening. You no longer need to force yourself to be good enough. No longer try to perform accepted versions of yourself. You understand that your worth doesn't come from perfection. It comes from the willingness to be genuinely present, even when it hurts, even when it makes you vulnerable. You become careful about what you let into your mind. The conversations you engage in. The words you repeat. Not because you become rigid, but because you begin to understand your mind is fertile soil where every thought can take root. And you have the right to choose what to plant. You choose what nourishes, not what drains. Transformation begins when you stop seeking peace as a destination and start living it as a way of life. You find peace in ordinary things. In a morning cup of tea. In the quiet sunlight on the floor. In the relieved sigh when you no longer force yourself to be someone else. No more silent panic chasing the meaning of life. Instead, a deep acceptance that life doesn't need grand meaning to be cherished. It only needs to be fully lived, from this moment to the next. You no longer need anyone to understand you, because you understand yourself. No need for a crowd's approval, because your inner consent is strong enough. No need for proof or reasons to live the way you choose, because you have stopped playing someone else's role in your own life. That is freedom. Not the freedom of one who runs away, but the freedom of one who has come home. Coming home to the self that was once abandoned. Coming home to the body once neglected. Coming home to the dreams once denied. And you live from that place, not because you are completely healed, but because you no longer feel the need to be perfect to begin. And when you live from that place of authenticity, you no longer feel the need to rush. No need to prove yourself, no need to struggle to keep up. Instead, you begin to live by your own rhythm, a rhythm not dictated by alarms, packed schedules, or the fear of being left behind. You walk more slowly but with greater certainty. And in that slowness, you begin to truly see. You notice the small details you once overlooked because you were too busy trying to be someone else. You feel the gentle breeze through the morning window. You hear your heartbeat without ignoring it as a distant sound. You begin to be present in the simple things, and that presence becomes the solid foundation upon which to build a full life. Because you are no longer running away from yourself, no longer needing the veil of busyness to avoid unhealed emotions. Now, you have the courage to sit quietly with yourself in the unnamed silences. You learn to stay with uncertainty, not to control it, but to understand it. You no longer need explanations for everything. You only need to feel what is true for you. And that is when everything begins to unfold. Not because you have all the answers, but because you stop asking the wrong questions. You no longer ask, "How can I be loved?" but start living as if you already deserve that love. You no longer ask, "What should I do to be recognized?" but begin living as if your very existence is proof enough. Validation no longer comes from outside. It lives in the way your eyes look at yourself. And then what you create from that place becomes impossible to replicate. Not because you are more special than anyone else, but because you dare to live as yourself, something no one else can do for you. Everything you touch carries that mark, the mark of courage, truth, and self-respect. Your life becomes a work of art, not to be displayed, but to be felt. No more roles to maintain. No more masks to hold tight. There is only you, honest, clear, present. And in this noisy world, that is the greatest miracle you can become. And then you realize that returning to yourself is not just a journey, but a great return. A return to the origin of who you were before the world taught you who you should be. No longer struggling to fix yourself to fit someone else's standards. No longer distorting your true desires just to become more lovable in the eyes of others. Instead, you begin to stand up, gently but firmly, from within. You no longer seek permission. You grant it to yourself. And in that simple moment, a miracle happens. You start living as if you lack nothing. Not because you have everything, but because you've stopped defining yourself by what you don't have. You live from a place of fullness flowing from within, a place unrolled by comparison, expectations, or the fear of being left behind. From that place, you no longer participate in races you never wanted to join. You stop judging others because they no longer reflect your insecurities. You begin to see the world with softer, more patient, and kinder eyes. Your presence gains weight, not because you are loud, but because you are real. Others feel the peace in how you listen, the trust in your gaze. Healing does not come from flowery words, but from the energy of no longer resisting within you. You no longer need everyone to fully understand you. You only need them to feel that you are genuine. And that is what begins to create new connections, deep, unhurried, and without selfishness. People come to you not because you entertain them, but because your presence allows them to be more themselves. You become a silent reminder that they too can stop, can let go, can breathe, without needing to explain anything. Because you have done it first. And you live as proof of that. In that moment, you no longer need the world's recognition to feel enough. Because you have learned to recognize yourself. And from there, you begin to be reborn. Not in a new form, but in a new spirit. A spirit no longer at odds with the heart. A person no longer living two lives, one to show others and one silently endured. There is only one you, and free. And then, you begin to understand that loyalty to yourself is not some grand declaration you need to prove, but a quiet, steady, and sincere return to your own feelings, time and time again. That's when you start to listen to the soft voice inside that you once hurriedly ignored because it was not the right time, because it seemed unreasonable, or simply because you used to fear it was true. But now you no longer overlook it. You pause. You listen. And for the first time in a long while, you believe it. This trust doesn't come from perfection. It comes from having faced yourself so many times in silence that you can no longer pretend. And through that process, you learn that the vulnerable, wounded, and unfinished parts of you do not make you less valuable. They make you real. And from that reality, you begin to reconnect with the world in a new way, no longer trying to impress, no longer needing to be right, no longer exhausted from wearing masks. You become lighter, not because life is less challenging, but because you no longer fight against yourself. From that place, you start seeing life with different eyes. You stop searching for the big thing that will change your life, and instead, you begin to honor the small moments. How the sunlight touches your shoulder in the early morning, the warm scent of tea in a familiar kitchen, the gentle silence after a sincere conversation. Everything becomes more alive, not because they change, but because you are fully present to feel them. And the surprise is this: the more you live authentically, the things that truly fit you begin to appear naturally. Not because you control or calculate, but because you have become an honest field with yourself, and that field attracts exactly what you need. The people who come to you bring sincerity. Opportunities arrive that don't force you to put on armor. Relationships are built on presence, not proof. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You just need to be present. And when you are truly present, you begin to touch life, no longer merely existing, but truly living. That is the return. Not noisy, not dramatic, but full of power. And that is when you realize, peace is no longer a destination you desperately seek. It becomes the way you walk each day, gently, present, no longer stretched between what you think you must do and what you truly feel is right. Life is no longer a stage where you have to perform something. It becomes a flow, where you don't need to resist, don't need to prove anything, just need to be present as yourself. From that presence, you learn an important truth. You don't need everyone to understand you to be accepted. You no longer seek validation in others' eyes. Not because you've become cold, but because you've found a deeper warmth within yourself. It's the feeling of being seen by yourself, heard by yourself. A feeling once unfamiliar but now familiar, like a light jacket draped over your shoulders in the breeze. You begin to distinguish between living for something and living to run away from something. Before, maybe you acted to avoid loneliness, to fill a sense of lack, to gain the attention you thought you needed. But now, you choose to act from a different space, not from scarcity, but from fullness. Not to escape, but to expand. Every step you take now carries clarity, no longer compulsion, but a gentle invitation from within. And then, something beautiful begins to happen. You no longer try to be kind, to be loved, but you choose kindness because it is true to yourself. You no longer stay silent to be accepted, but you know when to speak up and when to step back. All of this comes from a quiet understanding. You don't need everyone to like you to feel worthy. Because you have begun to love yourself, not a loud, flashy love, but a steady, present, and compassionate love. You no longer chase life. You touch it. Every single moment. And in that, the deepest things happen not outside of you, but inside. You forgive yourself, you grow more patient with what remains unclear, you become gentler with the parts of you still learning to heal. You are not perfect, but you are authentic. And with that alone, you are free. When you no longer get swept away by imagined stories about yourself or life, you begin to feel a peacefulness that comes from accepting reality, not because you give up, but because you choose not to fight what cannot be changed. It is this letting go that creates an empty space where your soul can breathe, listen, and grow. You start to realize that true strength does not lie in controlling everything around you, but in mastering your inner world. And within that mastery, you find a freedom unlike any before. Not freedom as escaping suffering, but as living in harmony with it, without letting it define you. You learn not to force yourself to be perfect, nor to strain to prove your worth. Your value does not depend on the gaze or judgment of others. It is built on honesty with yourself, on embracing every shadow, every vulnerability, and even the unhealed wounds. You know that each step, whether slow or lost, is part of your journey of growth, and that alone is enough to make you proud. There is no need to rush or race against time. You live at your own pace, the rhythm of true presence. On that journey, you begin to understand that the relationships around you are not about control or manipulation, but about feeling and connection. You allow yourself to be loved unconditionally and also learn to give love without expecting anything in return. This is not naivety, but a deep maturity born of awakening. You no longer get lost in pointless conflicts, no longer seek consensus from everyone, because you know not everyone will understand or resonate with you, and that is perfectly okay. You start to realize that by living authentically, you attract the right people into your life, companions who are not there to change you, but to celebrate life's diversity and differences with you. Such relationships become sources of positive energy, nurturing and expanding your soul. And you also learn to gently release connections that no longer fit or bring peace. You hold no resentment, no hatred, only the recognition that freedom lies in making wise choices. Gradually, life becomes not just existence but continuous creation. You do not fear change or getting lost because you know every experience has its own value. And you continually nurture patience with yourself so that each passing day is a day you return to yourself, original, simple, sincere, and full of vitality. There, in the harmony between awareness and feeling, you find an endless source of energy to move forward, to love, and to live a life that is not only meaningful but also filled with inspiration. You do not need to hurry, you do not need to explain, you only need to be yourself, and that is the most wonderful thing in the world. There is a truly magical moment when you realize that truth is not a destination but an ongoing journey. Your truth is not a ready-made map, but a lantern illuminating every step you take through the darkness. And each time you choose to live authentically, you add a small flame to that lantern, making it brighter, warmer, strong enough to guide you through life's complex crossroads. This does not mean life becomes easier, nor that all wounds will heal quickly, or every question will be answered clearly. But when you live your truth, you no longer get caught in the whirlpools of doubt and self-blame. You cease to be a victim of the past or of others' expectations. Instead, you become the active author of your life story, a person who knows their worth, unafraid to face darkness or challenges. Because truth is not only honesty with yourself but also the courage to accept every part of you, including the shadows, the mistakes, and the broken fragments of the past you once wanted to bury. You understand that no one is perfect, and it is precisely that imperfection that makes you who you are, authentic, vibrant, and full of life. In this acceptance, you find an indescribable gentleness, a profound ease born from no longer needing to pretend or hide. When your soul is freed from artificial constraints, you begin to see the world with different eyes. Small things become more meaningful, simple moments become sacred. A smile, a glance, a sincere word suddenly turn into precious gifts you don't want to miss. Life becomes soft, gentle, yet no less profound and complete. You no longer judge yourself by societal standards or others' judgments. You no longer compare yourself to anyone, because you understand that everyone's journey is unique and no one can walk your own path for you. Instead of chasing pre-drawn dreams, you learn to listen to the call within, the call of truth, genuine joy, and peace. And from there, everything begins to change naturally. You realize that the difficulties and pains you've endured are not meaningless nightmares but devoted teachers. They teach you patience, gratitude, and the hidden strength inside you that you never recognized before. You begin to understand that no path is easy, but each path can lead you to a better version of yourself if you walk it with an open heart. That is the transformation you cannot resist, a rebirth in your soul that needs no proclamation, no external recognition. It is a full life with yourself, a quiet but steadfast commitment to living by your truth and your honor. A commitment that makes you wake each day with peace, that makes every step meaningful, and that turns every moment of living fully into a miracle. So, don't rush to find perfect answers. Don't fear the unexplored silences within your soul. Let everything come naturally, like flowing water, like drifting clouds, and trust that you are on the right path. Every time you dare to face the truth, no matter how small, you take a step closer to the life your soul truly longs for, a life not meant to be perfect, but to be real. Let that truth be your guiding light, your endless source of energy to move forward, no matter what tomorrow holds. Because in the end, living your truth is living most fully, most meaningfully, and is the most precious gift you can give yourself.